What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have yet another album review, kind of rounding out this week of the 3rd of February with releases. And we decided to go with something more underground, but still with some familiar faces in it. We saw this one pop up as a project, and I was like, you know, this could be really interesting, namely because it involves a band with a very sordid history, but this is sort of them getting outside of that band and doing some different projects. So we're going to go over the debut full-length from Mithridatum, Harrowing. This also comes out on the 3rd of February on Willowtip Records. This is their debut album. This band formed, I believe, last year, and I think in California. I'm not entirely sure where because Archives hasn't included them yet. And, I mean, I feel like you should get on that because this is definitely fiercely metal as fuck. So again, this is their debut album. Features one Lyle Cooper and one Jeff Rico, formerly of, well...
So not so much familiar faces as it is familiar faceless.
Yep. We have some ex-members of the Faceless here, which, if one thing the Faceless knows how to collect, it's ex-members. Not so much current members, because, well, I think there's only 2 right now, but, you know, who knows? That band's so up in the air. We don't know. But it's good to hear some former members actually getting down to, like, some solid new stuff here. And both of these members were on Autotheism, which is often heralded as the Faceless's best album. This is also rounded out by one Marlon Friday from the band Abhorrent, which Lyle Cooper is also in. And this is, I would say, blackened death metal with a heavy focus on dissonance and atmosphere and absolutely batshit crazy drumming. Like, yeah, bass line, I would say, like, that is right out front.
Yeah, there's absolutely no denying that this is a drum-centric record. I mean, I've always been a fan of Lyle Cooper. His work in The Faceless, I thought, was pretty much top-notch, especially being as young as he was during the recordings of those albums. But the drum work in here, there aren't words for it. It's insane. I
would go on and say, like, I think this is the best drum performance I've heard him do.
100%.
You know, his work on, you know, again, Autotheism, I think was absolutely fantastic. But this is way more nuanced. Like, he's pretty much showcasing, like, almost everything he's got in terms of, like, interesting off-time grooves, crazy turnovers, blast beats, all the precision that you kind of get from his more tech death-oriented stuff, but with added flavor and nuance. Like, he's just really kind of going all out on this.
It's really tight, but he seems looser and relaxed, but he placates to so many styles. Like, there's blasts, and there's jazz, and there's groove. It's swingy a lot of times, but I mean, it's pretty damn good.
And all of this somehow fits into, I would say, for the most part, blackened death metal, maybe atmospheric black metal. I don't know, like, in terms of stuff it reminded me of, like, there's definitely spots where it's similar to bands like Devoid of Thought or later Gorguts. I would even say Ulcerate.
Yep.
But at other times, it gets more riff-centric, and when it's riffy, it seems more focused on black metal. Like, I got some stuff that reminded me of, you know, Satyricon in there, maybe, like, a little bit of, like, Zasther in terms of the atmospheric stuff. This album loves dissonance, and there are crazy amounts of atmosphere in here, mostly generated by the guitars, and the guitars are wild. I think played both by Marlon and Lyle, because Lyle is listed as a multi-instrumentalist, so I assume that he's probably partaking in the guitar tracks as well as the bass tracks in here, which the bass, well, it doesn't stand out very much in the mix, but the bass does work well in certain songs, especially Silhouette, which has some really cool, like, sort of sliding bass licks on there that I think accent the songs really well. This all kicks off with the song Sojourn, though, which right away, it's very chaotic. It's very dark. In fact, this is the most evil, unsettling thing I think I've heard Lyle be involved with. Now, granted, I haven't listened to Abhorrent, but this is just kind of creepy, evil sounding stuff. And Jeff Rico's vocal performance on here, really solid. I like the fact that there aren't a lot of vocal effects on him. Like, they have a touch of reverb on there, but he's not doing like a bunch of crazy filters. He has this very just kind of creepy blackened delivery. He's very clear with it. There's even some cool spoken word sections that are especially ominous on songs like Silhouette and The Passageway. But the vocals on here contribute pretty heavily to the atmosphere, but I would say it's mostly driven by the guitars.
I like the fact that on this vocal performance in particular, you're not getting, say, the death growls that he used in the Faceless. For the most part, it's just like ghastly, shrieking, terrified screams. I mean, that's what really draws into the black metal atmosphere for sure. I really like this vocal performance from him. Not that I didn't like his work in the Faceless. I think he was one of the Faceless's most entertaining vocalists.
Yeah, no, he was great live. I like this vocal performance for like multiple reasons. Again, it contributes to the atmosphere. It's very sparse too. Like there's not a lot of, you know, giant sections of like rapid fire vocals or anything that is more vocally driven. I would say again, it's mostly driven by the drums and the ambiance, but how he spaces it out, like, you know, longer growls and, you know, sort of capturing whatever mood they're going for, because this album likes to change gears quite rapidly. And most of it is about laying on these dissonant melodies, this interwoven guitar fucking spider web of misery and depression. It's just sort of creepy sounding.
Yeah, as far as all the transitions are concerned, like, you remember getting a 10-speed bike as a kid and you'd switch back between the gears, and then they came out with the 20-speed, and you were like, holy crap, this is fun. You go from 1 to 20 just to see what the variance is. It changes like a kid on a brand new 20-speed bike.
Yeah, you want to hit every button. The song Mournful Glow was the first one that I was like, man, all right, these guys like to change a lot. That is a very transition happy song. Like, it starts off really creepy, like, you know, giant unsettling atmosphere, little pockets of like, you know, some solid riffs, like a little bit more on the black metal side rather than the death metal side. But then it just kind of goes batshit crazy on these insane fucking, you know, transitions, like mostly driven by like the wild drum work, like changing drum beats, crazy turnovers, weird fills, blast beats.
In and out of it, because the riffs for the most part are, I don't want to say atonal because that's not true. The riffs for the most part are like just really just ambient, dissonant melody, while the drums just weave in and out all the time, and changing time signatures, and starting on the 1, starting on the 3, and then moving back and doing some weird jazzy shit, and like, Jesus.
It's a lot to process. Like, it took me a while to really center in on some like distinct riffs, because again, like these like sort of strummed, you know, dissonant melodies, they kind of just build this wall of atmosphere, but at the same time, it's not like a memorable riff or hook or melody. There are some like death metal tremolos in there that I thought were really cool, like a little bit deeper, a little bit more aggressive. But the issue with the song, and the issue with a good chunk of this album, is that these parts don't hang out very long, so you have this one moment to grab onto it, unless you choose to listen to these long tracks again. You know, it takes a little bit to really kind of get used to this, because, again, this just moves around like a fucking toddler that's been fed nothing but chocolate and Mountain Dew. Now, this isn't to say that this is all just chaotic as hell. There are some moments on here where it does kind of land some cool riffs, like namely Silhouette. Silhouette, I think, is one of the strongest songs in here. It's way more black metal centric, like very like kind of I would say second wave worshiping in some spots. Like, it's still very atmospheric, but there's still some really cold, gnarly riffs. Like, there is a stomping rhythm that goes through there, and it repeats. That is a bona fide hook. Like, it is a memorable section on there. And they pivot between that and the more atmospheric stuff, which makes the song more memorable. I think this song, they, you know, kind of lay on certain sections a bit longer, and they become more memorable.
I mean, the song's over 8 minutes long, first of all. That's impressive in itself, especially for a new band writing material of this nature. But this song, out of actually all the songs, has the most groove. The atmospheric, like the more atmospheric melodic parts are very much like in the wave of early Mastodon.
Yeah.
But it still relies on more atmosphere than it does on, say, Chugs, per se.
Yeah, but I mean, at least there's the dynamic flips there. Like, you actually have moments where, you know, it'll change it up a little bit. Like, not, again, solely relying on dissonance and the atmosphere. Like, there is a really cool breakdown in that song. Very riffy, more aggressive sounding. Like, it kind of takes maybe some more cues from the death metal side.
Yes.
But then the song sort of spirals into madness. And madness is definitely a big thing on here. Like, occasionally these songs will sort of just spiral out into some of the craziest shit that doesn't necessarily generate a hook, but you're still drawn into it because it's so fucking crazy sounding. It's like the protagonist in a Lovecraftian story, like after he saw the big slithering fucking monster, like, well, my mind can't process that. I guess I'll just shit and piss myself.
It also does hook back around to a little bit more put together music with the song Lower Power. It starts out with this absolutely hopeless melody, but that absolutely hopeless melody actually turns into a riff that hangs out for a lot of the song.
Yeah, I really dig that. And I mean, honestly, when I saw the track name, I was like, man, is that pretty much Lyle telling us that he doesn't skip leg day like a fucking punk?
Dude.
Because dude's fucking moving on here.
Speedy.
I swear his beats per minute are probably similar to the cardiogram of a fucking hamster on meth. But yeah, no, this song actually does some stuff that is kind of similar to Silhouette. It gets riffier. It's more dynamic. There's more standout moments. And that, in turn, makes it more memorable, at least to me.
It's got, for the first probably real time, it's got an actual earworm that hangs on for longer than, 15 seconds, like most of it occurs. Like the beginning of the passageway, that riff...
It's weird.
Is really cool, but it's the only time it's there.
Yep.
It's maybe 15 seconds long, where it does this really cool, like, triple-picked fucking chug, and you're like, all right, here we go. And then it never comes back.
And never repeating riffs are definitely an issue on here, and those are generally supplanted with waves of dissonant atmosphere. And at the rate of changing in terms of like the transitions on here, I would say that this album has ADD, but both D's stand for dissonance. Yeah, like, all right, the opening of the passageway, very distinct. And where that chuggy part comes in, it's kind of off time. It's a little strange. Like, all right, this is kind of an interesting thing to build on. And you would think it would be something that would repeat. Like, all right, that's a weird anchor point to revisit.
Yep. It would have been actually really... Because the way it sounds like it's going to be really sweet. And you're like, all right, here we are. Finally, something that latches on. It's got this cool chuggy part in it, but it doesn't. And it was kind of a letdown.
Again, this song starts shifting all over the place. Like, there's some, again, interesting, more death metal sections where you get, like, some deeper tremolo riffs.
Morbid Angel tremolo riffs.
Yeah, like, those just gnarly ones that, death metal heads are instantly familiar with. But then the song kind of does what Mournful Glow does, where it has this section where it spirals into madness, and it kind of takes a while to get it back together because, like, the transitions start happening super quick. Like, it is a blur of blast beats and turnovers and weird off-time rhythms. And the melodies behind them don't necessarily kind of fit with them. Like, I feel like the guitars should be as dynamic as the drums, which kind of led us to, like, one observation we both had was this kind of feels like it was like a drum clinic and then music was kind of written behind it. Like, it almost feels as though this is so drum-centric that everything else was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, I listened to part of this record on the way over here tonight, and that was immediately what I thought too, because first of all, my car is a piece of shit, and so it's kind of loud when I drive, so you can't always really hear what's going on in the music, which sucks, but that's where I'm at. Anyway, what I did pick out from the record while listening to it was all the drum work, and I thought, well, first of all, as a drummer myself, that's pretty fucking cool, but I didn't hear a whole lot going on otherwise, and I was like, well,
Yeah, and I mean, the performance is fucking amazing. Like,
top
again,
notch.
I think this is like Lyle's fucking finest performance. But musically behind it, like, it has moments where it is really good, like namely Silhouette and Lower Power. And then the other stuff is still good, but not as well put together. Like, Passageway, again, has some really cool moments. And then you get this long-winded section of just transition after transition. And then towards the end, you feel like, all right, they gotta find some sort of logical closure point because this is, feeling a bit long. And it feels like they should be building up towards, like, maybe like a big crescendo. And then it just stops.
Like, abruptly. Like, because the way it's like you said, it feels like it should be... It does. It feels like it's building a whole lot. And then you're like, all right, here comes something cool, maybe a breakdown, and then it abruptly ends. This is strange because while I was listening to the end of this song, I was messaging another band talking about the Death Fest, actually, and it just stopped, and I thought I hit a button. I thought I fucked up, and I was like, oh no. So I went back to the part we were at, and it ended. Like, we had to look it up on YouTube, just like, okay. Bandcamp said it was 6 minutes and 29 seconds or something like that, and it just ends. Like an incomplete thought.
I mean, it doesn't scream as though that was, like, intentional. It might have been. You know, there's a lot of things that we're just sort of guessing at here. Like, again, the drums being, like, the main thing first and then the music built around it. But that one feels like maybe they just cut off the song and that was, like, sort of a mistake. Like, maybe it's different on CD.
That's possible.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But this is the version we had to listen to. And, like, man, that feels so abrupt to the point where it, like, it's just, it almost just registers more as a mistake than anything else.
So, overall, I'm going to give this a 3. It's weird because we both have kind of mulled over this a bunch. The musical performances as they are, first of all, Lyle Cooper's performance is top-notch. Absolutely top-notch. Brilliant drum work. I like Jeff's vocal performance. It's up there with, I think, the best he's ever done. Now, I've never heard him in anything but The Faceless. This varies a lot from that, and I really like it. I also like the dissonant atmosphere. Those of you that have watched Thralls forever know that I thrive on dissonant and ambient melodies. It's really good, but it's so all over the map and so kind of disjointed at times that it's not enough to be like cohesive thought. And while I like chaotic music that bounces all over the map, like it seems like it's just missing something to latch onto. Although it has riffs, it's missing riffs, if that makes sense. I don't know how to say that otherwise. So it's a 3 for me. It's really good, but it feels like it's missing something. Like, and maybe I need more time with this record. I'm not sure. It's really good. I really like it, but it just doesn't kind of gel for me. So that's where I'm at.
I'm actually right there with you with a 3. Like, I think this is, you know, well done, well executed. The musicianship's fucking awesome. And there's some songs here I really do like Silhouette and Lower Power especially. Yeah. I think those are excellent songs.
And even Mournful Glow. I like that song too.
But I think this album kind of goes off the rails as far as atmosphere and dissonance and kind of forgets to really, like, generate some memorable sections that'll repeat. Like, this album kind of just gets busy kind of going forward, and then the distance takes over and it sounds like a theater full of ghostly alarm clocks going off. It's a bit much. When it came down to expectations on this, like, I didn't think this was going to sound like The Faceless. I heard one track and, like, that is so far removed from it. And honestly, that's good. I like hearing them branch out. I do love bands like Ulcerate. I think, you know, a band like Garia is kind of comparable. But the thing that a band like, say, Garia does in terms of dissonance and melody is they know how to repeat the hooks. Like, this kind of gets kind of lost in, like, maybe like the tech death writing style, except, you know, applied to dissonant, ambient, black and death metal.
Yep.
You know, it's kind of, you know, like, oh, we got to do this and this and this, and it gets too busy for its own good. Like, I think the songs that stood out because they laid on melodies, they repeated them, and they still incorporated all the dissonance. You kind of have to have that balance, at least for me. Like, that's going to be easier for me to get into. When it's just chaotic, sprawling, you know, nuttiness, you're going to lose me. I'll still probably appreciate it on some musical level in terms of, like, weird creativity. But I think this band has a lot of potential. Not necessarily the worst start here. Like, still, it's a 3-star album.
No, yeah,
this is good.
It's good.
But it's just kind of crazy. And it just needs to, you know, calm down a little bit in some respects. And, you know, bring in some riffs. Just mix it up just a little bit, because that's a good anchor point. That's going to draw more listeners in, I think. But that's just me. Overall, I'd still recommend checking this out. Again, if you're a fan of bands like Garia, Ulcerate, later Gorguts. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to fucking, you know, latch onto there. But yeah, the important part is definitely check this out. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there, as well as our store. So if you'd like to maybe pick up a shirt, we do need to reload. that's where you do it, and that's also where you hook up with Patreon.
So I think shortly after this video comes out, you'll see the next round of bands in the Denver Death Fest. This makes announcement number 4. Even I am shocked by the amount of response that we've received, and I really think we're almost close to being sold out of tickets, and we haven't even announced all the bands, which is pretty fucking cool. I'm really honored to be a part of this. I know Miller is also really happy to be a part of this. It's been a definite awesome learning experience for all of us, but most of all, we are stoked to be a part of something of this magnitude. 30 bands, 3 days, Denver, Colorado, April 20th through the 23rd, 2023. Fucking be there. Come on out. Hang out with us. We will all definitely be there running around like crazy people, having a pretty good time because it's a music festival.
Because we look like we both run.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Let me reiterate. We will be there. Likely
sitting
not
down,
running. Yeah,
panting.
Probably sitting down and panting due to the altitude difference.
Jesus Christ, that's going to suck.
Yep. Yep. I always forget about the altitude difference. Drink plenty of water while you're there.
And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. You guys fucking rule. You guys keep us going. I know I try to think of something different to say, but it usually comes out as a big, awkward thank you. And
we're good at that. We're good at being awkward.
Yeah, I mean, we're awkward like a fucking boner in sweatpants. Like, we're just kind of out there and just try not to look at it, and we'll just try to pretend it's
look
not
away,
there.
Look away. Oh, my God.
Hopefully it's impressive. But, no, seriously, thank you all so much, and we will catch you later.